Okay guys, so for my third exam video we had to choose two different places and do a versus on them. So I did the Himalayan Mountains versus the Andes Mountains. So the volcanic activity between the two. So the Himalayan Mountains, there's barely any volcanic activity because the kind of boundary it has a continental to continental convergent plate boundary. So these type of boundaries leads to most time leads to non-volcanic mountain ranges. So that's why the Himalayas has no volcanic activity pretty much at all. The Andes Mountains was a totally different story. The Andes Mountains host more volcanoes that have ever been active in the past 10,000 years. So I mean, it's probably one of the most volcanic active places in the world. As well as it has giant caldera systems that produce 6 of the 47 largest explosive eruptions. So it is extremely active in the Andes Mountains, and it's a divergent boundary with the Arctic plate, Antarctic plate, and Chile rocks. So earthquake activity, the Himalayan Mountains, this mountain range is still active. The Himalayan Mountains and the Andes Mountains both are very active with earthquakes, since they both have, plates slamming up against each other. The range of these earthquakes, the Himalayan Mountains go to a depth of between 0 and 120 kilometers. Most of them were between 0 and 40 kilometers, but some of them went as deep as 120 kilometers, but usually it was a shallower depth. But some did go deeper. For the Andes Mountains, it is quite different though. This mountain range, almost all the earthquakes were between 110 and 130 kilometers. It was pretty deep, and it was in between a pretty short distance. So it was 20-kilometer differences where most of the earthquakes happened in the Andes Mountains. So for age, the Himalayan Mountains range and the Tibetan Plateau have formed as a result of the collision between the Indian plate and the erosion plate, which began 50 million years ago. So the Himalayan Mountains have been going on for a while. The Andes Mountains actually are quite a bit younger. The uplift began between 30 and 20 million years ago. So the Himalayan Mountains have been growing a lot longer than the Andes Mountains have. The topographic characteristics. The Andes Mountains, largest mountain chain in the world, includes deserts. One of the driest deserts in the world, includes plateaus. The second highest plateau in the world, located in the Pacific Ring of Fire. So that's a reason it has a lot of volcanoes. It's in the Pacific Ring of Fire. That's why it's called that. Himalayan Mountains. The characteristics of Himalayan Mountains are they're extremely high. They have steep-sided, jagged peaks. They have valleys and alpine glaciers, often of huge. They're really huge glaciers. It's deeply cut by erosion. Has river gorges, complex geological structure, and then it's crazy. So versus each other, obviously they're both mountain ranges, but they are different. The Andes Mountain is ocean to continental plate boundary, while the Himalayan Mountains are continental to continental, and that explains quite a bit why the Andes has a lot more volcanoes, and that's because it's located on the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is really known for its volcanic activity. And they are both extremely earthquake activity, and that is just purely because of the plates hitting up against each other. That's all I got for this one. I gotta turn in before I run out of time, so have a good one.